They say every dog has his day, but I'll tell you sometimes it's the day you least expect, and the whole world shifts on its axis. I never thought I'd be the cop who blew up a federal courthouse on a Tuesday morning, or that my partner 4 paws, one twitchy nose, and a name that gets strangers to smile would drag me straight into a story that would crack open the past and make headlines for months. You know what I mean? That kind of day you can feel buzzing in your bones before it even begins. I'm Officer Jake Morrison, and my partner's name is Shadow. Not a fancy name, not a poetic one, just Shadow, the dog who saved a life and unearthed the truth nobody wanted to face. But let me back up a sec. It started like any other shift. Second cup of bad precinct coffee, weather just cold enough to sting, the city stretching awake in the dull gray of a Denver morning. I wasn't even supposed to stop at the courthouse, just another stone box on my patrol loop, but Shadow had other plans. He started whining in the back seat at first, just a little, like he'd seen a squirrel or wanted out. But then he went stiff, eyes locked on the courthouse steps, and let out a bark that sliced through my chest. That dog had never, not once, barked in the cruiser. I swear, it was like he knew something was about to blow. Against every ounce of training, I hit the hazards, popped the back door, and before I could even get a leash on, Shadow hauled me toward those glass doors like I was nothing but dead weight. Inside, just business as usual, lawyers arguing, security guards sipping coffee, the usual court drone. Until we stormed in. The bailiff reached for his radio, but I flashed my badge, K9 unit, he's caught a scent, and Shadow was already zigzagging down the marble, nose glued to the ground, pulling me deeper into the building. You ever see a courtroom right before things go sideways? That thick tension you could cut with a knife, everyone holding their breath? That's what we crashed into in Courtroom B. Judge Monroe was up on the bench, 2 lawyers mid-argument, social worker in the back row, and at the heart of it all, this little girl Lena Cruz, just 8 years old, sitting alone, waiting for someone to decide her fate. She looked at us, and for a second, the room stopped spinning. But Shadow didn't pause. He shot under the judge's podium like he'd been doing this his whole life, and I dropped to my knees, heart pounding. There in the crawl space behind the bench was another girl, tiny, shaking, clinging to a stuffed rabbit. Ava, 4 years old, missing for 3 hours, hiding right under their noses. Let me tell you, when that happened, the courthouse didn't just lose its composure. It exploded. EMTs rushed in, officers scrambled, the judge called an instant recess. I knelt beside Shadow, who was suddenly gentle, letting Ava cling to him like he was her last hope. And Lena? She watched, eyes huge, not crying, not moving, just noticing everything. Later, as the courtroom emptied and Ava was finally safe in her grandmother's arms, Lena stayed put. She didn't want attention. She just watched Shadow circle back to me, tail wagging, job done. The judge called me into chambers, but not to scold. She thanked Shadow, even cracked a smile. He's trained, but not uptight. I like that. For a second, things almost felt normal. But you and I both know, nothing about that day was normal. Here's where things turn. See, Lena didn't leave. She sat on the bench in the hallway, petting Shadow, while her soon-to-be adoptive family of Martinez couple watched her like she was a miracle. After what she did for Ava, sitting down and soothing her in Spanish, I don't think anyone in that room missed the way Lena just connected. Some kids have that gift. The gift of being invisible until suddenly they aren't. A few days later, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Shadow had gone back to eating kibble and chasing tennis balls, but I kept replaying the scene. Lena's kindness, Shadow's focus. It felt unfinished, like the story had one more chapter one hadn't seen yet. So, I want to check in on Lenano badge, just me and Shadow, and a question burning in my chest. That's when Lena told me she was picking a new middle name. She looked at Shadow, then at me, and said, "Maybe Hope." Man, you ever hear a kid say something so simple it breaks you wide open? Yeah, that happened. But the courthouse wasn't finished with us. A couple weeks later, Shadow started acting weird. Restless. Couldn't sleep. He'd stare out the window at night, ears up, like he was waiting for someone or something. Call it instinct, call it unfinished business, but I followed his lead, and went back to the courthouse just to walk the halls. As we passed Courtroom D, Shadow stopped cold, nose pressed to a vent in the baseboard. I unscrewed it, expecting nothing, but pulled out a faded blue cloth child-sized, dusty, embroidered with a single letter, E. My blood ran cold. Turned out, in 2001, a 6-year-old girl named Eloise Gardner vanished from that very courthouse. The case went cold, no body, no clues, nothing but silence and rumors. Things got dark fast. I started digging through records. Only one name kept popping up for maintenance that day: Caleb Rowe, janitor, still working there. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just said, some things ought to stay where they're put. That's not the kind of thing you forget. With Judge Monroe's quiet approval, we got a warrant for his custodial spaces. We found it in the basement. A mismatched tile in the janitor's closet. Underneath, a shallow grave, a child's blanket, fragments of bone, and a tiny pink shoe. It was Eloise. Justice, 23 years overdue, finally clawed its way to the surface thanks to a dog who refused to let the past stay buried. Caleb vanished before we could arrest him, but he left a note in his apartment, taunting us. The manhunt didn't last long. Shadow caught his scent by the woods behind Lena's new home. We found Caleb hiding out, hollow-eyed, shaking. He confessed. I just wanted to scare her. I didn't mean to, but some mistakes don't get second chances. The headline's called Shadow, a Hero, K9 Cracks 23-Year Mystery. TV crews wanted interviews. I said no. That story belonged to Eloise. A month later, at a quiet memorial, Lena read a letter. Eloise, I didn't know you, but I felt you. You mattered. Shadow stood guard the whole time, not moving, like he understood what was at stake. He retired after that. No more chasing bad guys, just school visits and porch naps, always at Lena's feet. One day, Lena asked me, do you think dogs have feelings like people? I told her, they've got something better. They just know. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe done something right. And sometimes the biggest rescues don't happen with sirens and flashing lights. Sometimes it's just one dog, one girl, and the stubborn belief that even lost voices deserve to be heard. So I'll ask you, have you ever known a dog or a person who understood you? No words needed? Drop a comment, share your story, and let's keep the conversation alive. Because in the end, it's the quiet acts of loyalty and kindness that change everything. If you believe in that, if you think animals make us better people, join us, like, subscribe, and be part of something good. Because sometimes the smallest act of courage is all it takes to bring someone home.